everyone, I'm Jennifer Seeger and welcome to another What I Eat in a Day on the Whole30. So this is part 2 because I actually filmed one of these last year when we did the Whole30, and I thought there are so many different recipe ideas and so many things that we've kind of discovered this go around that I wanted to do another video. So as we get started here, if you would please click that like and subscribe button below. I would sure appreciate it. Just getting the day started today, of course, with coffee. And if you've been following my channel, I am in love with my Nespresso machine. I'll link the one I have below, but they make so many different kinds. So I do miss my traditional lattes a little bit when we're on the Whole30. It takes a while to get used to unsweetened coffee, and I could just drink it black, but I do like it with the unsweetened vanilla almond milk. And if I'm being honest, I can't taste much of the vanilla, but it is just nice to have that creamy flavor. And I think more for me, coffee is a ritual in the morning. I just love having a cup when I wake up, and that's usually the first thing I do. But we do a pretty hearty breakfast when we're on the Whole30, and I don't always have a breakfast plan. I usually look for leftovers for inspiration, and today I am finding some leftover potatoes, Brussels sprouts, and peppers from a sheet pan dinner, and then also a salsa that we had made actually for a party we had. And the salsa works great in eggs, so I like having that on hand. We usually use it within a week or so of just in different dishes and sides and things. So I've got that heating up with some ghee, which is clarified butter. It's where you remove the dairy from the butter because, of course, dairy is not compliant on the Whole30. And I've also got some ghee in the pan to get some potatoes fried up. I am going to add some eggs. We usually do 3 per person if we're just going to have eggs, because that's the recommendation of the Whole30. And I will link below the Whole30 book and rules in case you wanted to look up some of that yourself. But my favorite way to prep eggs in a scramble is with the blender ball, because you use these for protein shakes, but we love them for eggs because it's easier than dragging out a blender or the NutriBullet. We can just kind of shake it up in there and then get it added in with the peppers, and of course, liberal doses of salt and pepper to get a good scramble going. I'll usually start with my burner on a medium high, but then turn it down more to a low because I don't want the eggs to burn, and they cook up pretty quickly, so it doesn't take much more than a stir or two. With the potatoes, I keep it again like a medium high and just make sure and toss those around. They're already cooked, so I'm just looking to crisp them up a little, and that is our breakfast. We have some egg scramble, each have half a banana with some leftover potatoes. And all through it, our puppy, Ruby, is patiently waiting for her breakfast. So we'll get her fed as well before we move on to making lunch. And so for lunch, Nate and I are doing different things. And I don't always pack his lunch. Sometimes we have different things. Sometimes we have the same. We are loving some of the finds from Costco this time around. The bacon we have to get from Walmart. That's the only place we've been able to find compliant. Usually low sodium bacon is the most compliant that we find in Costco. Our Costco's not carrying it right now. But one thing our Costco is carrying that's new, I haven't seen it before anyway, is this lettuce. And I love how just delicate it is, and it comes off really well at the stem. I usually like to do get a pile of it together and make a wrap. And I've done wraps with chicken salad, tuna salad, and the easiest for Nate to take because Nate doesn't have a job where he can heat anything up. I do, fortunately, can take leftovers and heat them up, but I think this is such a great idea for people that need a cold something on the Whole30. If you're packing your lunch, that can be hard to do. So we just lay down the lettuce and usually 3 to 4 slices of turkey. I get a little, this is Primal Kitchen avocado mayo that I am putting on top. And then we've pre-cooked some of that low sodium bacon, which again is compliant, and just have that for sandwiches. Now, if I had them, I would put some tomatoes probably too on top of this, but it is a low grocery day, believe it or not. So we are just working with what we have. I'll roll it up, and this is really easy to, we've tried it in the baggie, and he said that was really hard to get out. So instead we have this sandwich keeper that we've had forever that I can just tuck the whole wrap inside. And it is just such an easy thing. For those of you that don't know or are new to my channel, my husband Nate, he does HVAC work. So he is in the truck most of the day, kind of going out to different calls. And he doesn't have like a break room or anywhere to sit and eat. So we pack a lunch, throwing in some grapes today. And then the other thing is, especially in winter, we don't know how long his day is going to go. So I think the most important thing on the Whole30 is to have snacks. And we love these Lara bars. Target makes a Lara bar, and then we get these mini beef sticks that are grass-fed. We found these at Costco, but Target has like a more affordable Lara bar option, which is just chopped dates and nuts and things. So that's Nate's lunch, and I'm getting ready to take lunch for me as well. Another thing that I swear by is freezing this Kirkland, again, Costco brand, kind of guacamole. They make a mashed avocado that they sell there too, but we don't like it as well. We like this guacamole, which is compliant. If you can see here, we bought these in October and just threw them in the freezer, and then we heat up some water or put some hot water in a cup and let it sit in there for a few minutes to thaw out. Then I'll just put it with a pack of tuna, and this is like a tuna salad. You can put it on a wrap. I eat this a lot when I'm not on the Whole30, and I'll do it with some wheat thins or crackers. But, you know, it just works as a really great dip and a good source of protein. I am putting a little bit of mayo in, though I've made this before just with the guacamole, and it is just as good. And like I said, I've got that salsa. This is a salsa I make, by the way, and I will link the video and the recipe for you to watch because I have a whole video on how I make it. But that is kind of our tuna dip, if you will. And then I'm going to make my quote unquote chips with sweet peppers. And sweet peppers is another thing. I know I ate them in my last What I Eat in a Day on a Whole30. I'll put them on a salad. I'll eat them plain. I'll eat them with a compliant kind of ranch dip. In this case, it's a high protein, call it a tuna dip. But they work just like a chip, and they taste so very good. They're easy to just throw in a baggie. And then when it's lunchtime, you know, dip them just like a chip. And this is one of my favorite things to eat anytime, not just Whole30. I'll also pack for my lunch a little bit of fruit and a Lara bar. I do work from home some days, but today I was working in the office, so I always love getting home to our Ruby, who's so excited to see us. I can't remember the days even where I would get home without having a dog because it's so fun to just get greeted in this manner. And time to get dinner ready. So I've printed off some of my favorite Whole30 recipes. I keep them in a binder. This one, I will link it below, but I have heavily adapted it beyond what the recipe calls for. So, but I'll link kind of what I started using. The funny thing about this is it says something like prep time is 10 minutes or something ridiculous. It like makes you think it's a quick thing to make, and it kind of is, but I mean, it calls for a whole cooked spaghetti squash. So that takes some time to prep and cook, and I don't mind it at all because come pumpkin carving time, one of my favorite things is to get the seeds out of pumpkins, and I feel like spaghetti squash kind of satisfies that in me. Just scoop out the seeds, you know, cut it in half, scoop out the seeds, a little bit of olive oil. I was maybe a little heavy-handed today with that, but I brush it all along the inside and then simply add some salt sprinkled on it, and I'm going to do a 375-degree oven for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. I know the recipe, again, says you can cook this 425 for 20 minutes. I stick with my tried and true. Just flip it upside down on the cookie sheet. I'm doing 375 for, like I said, a little over an hour will do the trick. And I have that amount of time before Nate's home and we're eating. We usually eat around somewhere between 6 and 6:30. So this is kind of relaxing to get all the veggies prepped, and it calls for them julienne style. I'm also adding more than it calls for. I think it calls for half a zucchini, and I'm like, what am I going to do with the other half a zucchini? So I might as well just do it all up. And then it also calls for a minced bell pepper. You guys, I don't even know what minced is. I'm like, I'll just cut it really small. It'll be fine. I'm not a big recipe follower always, which kind of drives Nate nuts. Like when we've done things like HelloFresh and get the kits in with the directions, I'm just all over the place. I'm like, this will work. And he wants to follow it exactly. So sometimes if we're cooking together, I know he gets a little frustrated with me because I'm big on adaptations, and I figure it's all going to work out in the end. It'll be just fine. And the first time I made this recipe, I know that I used I think a vegetable peeler to finely chop. I wasn't quite sure what julienne was, so I just used my peeler like I would take off the peels for a carrot. I did the whole carrot that way, and it pretty much dissolved in the recipe. So I did start cutting it just in these really thin strips, but there's nothing, I guess for me, I don't like a crunchy carrot in a recipe like this, and maybe you do. The other funny thing about this recipe is it actually calls for it to be served cold, which is maybe a way you could prep all your ingredients. And I think these are meant to be more crisp than I like them. I'm making mine more like a hot dish, but to each his own. So I get my vegetables prepped, and then there's a whole sauce. So again, this is more of an involved recipe than I do this isn't an every night kind of thing. So I need 6 of the medjool dates pitted. I think I told a story in another vlog where I did not know they were pitted or had pits. And so we had an interesting meal one night trying to figure out what in the world went wrong. And I'm adding some coconut milk. Now I showed the can of what I use, and we pick it up in a pack of 8 at Costco, but I have a lot of recipes that'll just call for half a cup or something. So it does store in the fridge for probably a week to 2 weeks. I've never clocked it, but I've stored it for quite some time. Coconut aminos are a great soy sauce alternative. They add a lot of flavor. And then also I love these Thai. I'll use the red. I have green too, red and green curry paste for a lot of different dishes, where in this we're making, I don't even know if you saw in the recipe or I mentioned what we're making, but making Asian ginger noodles, and the noodle being the spaghetti squash. So we cook with that quite a bit on the Whole30, and these pack a lot of flavor for just a couple tablespoons. I think the recipe is also calling for freshly grated ginger or maybe ginger powder. I never have either really on hand. I use this organic puree, and I just picked this up at Walmart. And again, I am not a great recipe follower, so I am winging it and just kind of dumping in what looks right to me. Again, with the shortcuts, I never have the garlic cloves. We get the family size minced garlic, and as you can see, we use quite a bit of that. So that is the sauce, just blending it together. It is pretty runny sauce when you get done with it. Just make sure all the dates are combined, and then getting my veggies in and starting to cook. I think, again, the recipe just calls for a few minutes, and I like to get them pretty sauteed. So I start them early on a medium low, and then get some cilantro ready with the kitchen shears. If you haven't seen my hack for this, this is the best way to chop cilantro. I can't imagine going back to a knife and a cutting board. It just doesn't work. And then getting some cashews ready also. I just threw those in the oven. I tried to film putting them in the oven, but my camera steamed up. So just trust me, I threw them in the oven for the last 10 minutes with the spaghetti squash. And then once my vegetables are cooked up, I'm adding my sauce to this. The only complaint I have with the NutriBullet is that they have these grooves on the side, so it's hard to get in with a rubber spatula and scrape it all down. But only complaint. Otherwise, I love using my NutriBullet. So the squash has been in for about an hour and 15 minutes. You can see it is really cooked. I like it squishy. Sometimes at that hour mark, it's still a little crunchy, and it is cooked to perfection today. So it's so easy to do a spaghetti squash. It's so versatile. We'll fill these up with chicken and some red onion and some compliant barbecue sauce. We'll make a traditional spaghetti squash and use it just over top of these quote unquote noodles. We'll do a lot of things I mentioned with the red and green curry. So it's a really versatile thing, readily available in fall and winter. So big fan of the spaghetti squash. And it's also really fun and satisfying to get it shredded when it's all said and done. And I just kind of shred it in the shell, and it's a little tricky to pick up the shell, but you can just, however you want to do it, just dump it all in there, and I get it all mixed together. This is probably the least pretty thing that I make to put on camera for The Whole30, trust me, it tastes super duper duper good. But yeah, it looks kind of like mush. And if you try it cold and it's good cold, just leave me a comment below. Let me know how it turned out for you. But I can't imagine eating it cold. To me, it just seems like it should be a warm thing. So I add the cilantro into the whole pot, but then I wait, and as we're plating it, putting those cashews on, which again, we're in the oven for just about 10 minutes, not terribly long. And I have skipped the step where I've roasted the cashews as well and just put them on there out of the jar. And trust me, it's perfectly fine. But I do think it's nice because this texture, it's kind of mushy, to be honest, and it's nice to have the texture and the crunch of the cashew in there. If I roast them, I find they're a little less crunchy, so honestly, maybe I'll prefer it the other way. But anyway, dinner was excellent. We have a little bit of pickup to do. This one, like I said, is pretty involved, but picked up the kitchen. And then the evenings lately for Nate and I consists of using the iFit on our new treadmill. We are just obsessed with it. You can choose a different workout and they're in different cities. Today I am in Florence and gonna spend 30 40 minutes walking around. It confuses Ruby to no end, but that is our evening. I'll work out usually, and then Nate will switch it up and then take some time to have, I love a good mocktail. And so on the Whole30, I use these sparkling waters. We like the Good and Gather brand, and then I usually like to zhuzh it up with some lemon or lime juice. Today I'm adding some key lime and getting that stirred up. And another challenge that we have, if you've been following my channel, we're doing Whole30 in February, and then also cutting down on our screen time. So we are really only spending a few minutes. I think we're watching like a 30-minute show tonight. Ruby's getting her snuggles in, trying to get a little drink in as well, and relaxing. So that is a day for us on the Whole30. Thank you so much for watching. Again, like and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time.